Good afternoon, Mrs. Bangura. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
We often find that victims of sexual and gender-based violence, both women and men, are stigmatized and ostracized by their own communities. What can we do to prevent the stigmatization of these victims?
I think the first thing that everybody has to understand is that sexual violence is a crime not only against an individual. It's a crime against the society, it's a crime against the community and the family. So when you sexually abuse somebody, the whole family, the whole community becomes a victim. So people try to make sure they take it off their mind, and the only way they can do it is to get rid of the victim, get the victim out of the picture. And I therefore think one of the things that most successful experience I have seen is actually giving them visibility. People normally say, oh, set up a group of survivors so they can, when they are together to themselves, they continue to feel as victims. So the only way you can do is to transfer the shame and the stigma from the victim to the perpetrators. The way you do that is to talk about the sexual violence. Is to talk about it and let the society and everybody know how bad it is and put the blame on the perpetrators. And then bring the victims and make them very visible, getting them to join organizations, to join women's groups. So they are part of society, making them visible, making them working with society so they themselves can feel comfortable. And I think the best I have seen is this, is the Yazidis. What's happened with the Yazidis? Because they didn't sit down and say, oh, we can't talk to anybody who are victims. No, they went across the wall and said, listen, this crime was committed against us and we're going to accept it. I think the second thing is bringing communities, religious leaders. You have to look for champions. Our societies are mostly men-dominated. The social norm in society makes the men to take the decision, and women feel discriminated against. Not feel, women are discriminated against because of the social norm in society. So who else do you want to talk to? Talk to the men, whether the men in journalism, the men in religion, the men everywhere aspect of society, religious leaders, to be the champion, to be the face and the voice of this woman, to talk about what it meant, what can be done, and how they have an obligation as a society to bring those women out, to protect them. Again, my best example is the Yazidis, because the high priest of the Yazidi, Baba Sheikh, he actually became the champion. How to bring these women out from the ISIS, sex slave market, and how to redeem them, cleanse them, accept them in society, and treat them like a jewel. That made a difference within the Yazidis, because the young girls who are being raped in the ISIS camps actually were committing suicide because they could not face their family. They realized the shame and indignity of what it means. And I think that's the second thing to do, getting men as champion, get to organization. The third and the last what I feel is actually having men survivors. People always believe sexual violence is just against women and girls. No, men have been victims of sexual violence. How do you get these men to talk about their story so that other men understand the pain of it, and then they can then call to the other men and said, you can't do this. This is how we felt about it. This is how difficult it is. So for me, those are the simple things at the moment in time where I think communities getting involved, society generally, and people understanding that it's not the fault of the victim. The victim is not at fault. The victim is a victim. And how do you transfer the shame to the perpetrators and make sure society sees them as evil, instead of seeing the women victims as the evil aspect of it?
Do you think that harsher sentences are required for perpetrators of sexual and gender-based violence, and would this in some way act as a deterrent?
My dear, there's nothing more important like decriminalizing sexual violence. My philosophy is, if you commit sexual violence, wherever you are, whoever you are, will go after you. When they lock you up for 100 years or 50 years, you know that you cannot come out and commit. But you know, some of the most ridiculous things I have seen around the world is sometimes people go for 3 months. The law in some countries is just unbelievable. I mean, sometimes it becomes laughable. Somebody steals a goat, or somebody shoots somebody, or somebody hits somebody, they go for 5, 10 years. Somebody commits sexual violence, they go for 6 months. I think sexual violence should be a crime which, when you pay, make it very costly. When you make it very expensive for people to commit, they will think twice. Why? Sexual violence is not a crime that is committed by accidents. It's a crime that they plan. They plan it and they do it. So you should plan to prosecute them and make them be in jail for the rest of their lives. When they do that, then they understand it's very expensive. So they will think twice before they commit a crime. So I really think it should have one of the harshest punishments. You know, I don't support the death penalty. So less than the death penalty, I think I support my president when he says it should be life imprisonment.
You've mentioned the importance of accountability and that harsher sentences would be a good way to prevent further perpetration of these crimes. But what else can we do to prevent the perpetration of sexual and gender-based violence?
I think the first important thing is to strengthen the law. It's extremely important. It's to strengthen the law, is to protect the witnesses, you know, and is to be able to train the people. That is capacity. To collect sexual violence evidence is not easy. People who report it, they have to be protected. You have to collect the evidence in time. You have to protect the evidence. And you have to have, whistleblowers, hotlines. So in my country, a lot of the crimes are committed in communities. How does that person go to the police station? If they can just pick up a phone and call a number, and the person collects the information and says, I'm saying a police station. If you are in that part of the country, I'll call the police officer, the nearest police station to go to you. You don't have to go. And I think the challenge is when you're dealing with sexual violence issues, I see it in my country. You go to the police station, the police refers you to hospital, you walk 3 miles to go to the hospital collects the evidence and they give you the paper and you go back to the police station and then you start going to the courts. And then all kind of problem. I saw it in Rwanda. For me, it's my best example, the one-stop shop. Everything is in one place. So once you leave your house, you enter that building, everything, including a lab to do the test, forensic test is there, including a safe home. So that if you find it very difficult for you to go to your house, there are bedrooms where you can stay. There are therapists in the same building. You don't even have to climb the steps. You go to the therapist to actually give psychosocial support. So in Rwanda, everything is in one space. And it makes it much easier for the woman, more confident. Because when you enter in the place in Rwanda, the one-stop shop, and you're given evidence, and the person who collects information realizes that you're so traumatized you can't talk. She stops collecting it, then she refers you, phone the therapist who comes and picks you up and actually puts you in a state of mind in which you are comfortable. There is a lawyer there who can provide you legal aid to see, do we prosecute? Is it your husband? Is it a family friend? How can we charge the person? And if you are not comfortable to go back home or you don't have a safe place, they have a safe house for you. So, you know, these are all strategies. And I think the important issue that how do we learn from each country? How do we share? The peer-to-peer sharing experience. That's what we are not doing. Everybody is trying to do it on their own. But they have very good experiences. Like I said, in Guatemala, they have the weekend courts. Because they realize that most of the sexual violence have been done on weekend when men get drunk. You know, so they commit all this crime. So they open the courts on Saturday and Sunday. So you can actually report a case Saturday morning or Saturday evening. And you know you can go to court on Sunday. So there are lots of experiences. People have tried various ways. So for us, I don't think it's impossible. I think it's how we can just put our energy together, galvanize the resources, and train the relevant people who should be involved, the medical people, the law. To me, it's very, very important. Because, for example, in Sierra Leone, the Criminal Proceedings Act says you have to be examined by a doctor. We have 150 doctors in Sierra Leone, and most of them are not in the rural area. So if you collect evidence in rural area, you're being examined by a midwife, and she makes a report. Or technicality, you can lose the case. So these are all the things that we have to learn, we have to share, we have to work with. But the most important is political commitments. I have seen it in countries like the DRC, in some of the most difficult cases, when the politician, especially the leader, the president, when he makes the decision, I'm going to deal with this. Believe you me, there will be change. I saw it in the DRC where the president himself personally got involved. You know, the military was committing 50% of the sexual violence crime. Within a year, it reduced to 50%. They actually put a military justice system together, which we helped them support. Within a year, they prosecuted 150 military, including a general. So that makes the difference. So the political will is first and foremost, but then you can put all the different things together. It cannot be done by just one person. It has to be done by everything. But at the end of the day, we need a campaigner, the women, who will work on it. So it's something that can be done.
Thank you very much for joining us.